Hello everyone. So far we have already discussed about the basics of companies, and you also know the basics of law and how our Companies Act is structured into, right? If we talk about the first chapter of Companies Act, it has just two sections. Section number 1, which is preliminary. It of course contains that Companies Act is known as Companies Act. That is the title, of course, and then applicability, extent, all that part. And in section number 2, we have a lot of definitions. Why are definitions so important? Well, at a lot of places, like Companies Act has 470 sections, my dear, and out of those 470 sections, there are usage of n number of words. And every word might have a different meaning, not the meaning that we talk about in daily life. Imagine when you were young and you were stuck, when you were starting to read that English text or anything like that, and you were stuck at some word, you could not figure out what is the meaning of this particular word. You would walk up to your parents or teachers and ask them, say for example, what prohibition means or what any word means. They would counter question. At least my father did it most of the times. He would counter question me that where have you read it? What is the line? What is the adjoining words? In which context? Oh my God. Why? Because we understand at a later point of time that the words do not have one meaning. They do not carry one meaning. They have different meanings. And it is the context which actually tells us which meaning we should pick to read that particular sentence. Likewise, when we're talking about Companies Act, we have so many words, probably around 100 or more than that, words which need to be defined. Because every time, in every section, there cannot be an explanation added, this means this means this means this. It would just make the act too long. So, section 2 of Companies Act 2013 contains the meaning of words. We will read these definitions which are going to be helpful throughout Companies Act 2013, right? So, now we are going to begin reading these definitions. The definitions of under most of the acts, under 90% of the acts, you will find in section number 2 only. For some other acts, they may be in section number 3, 5, most probably the initial sections. Okay, now let's start with the definition part. So, ma'am, in today's class, we are going to read about the definitions, yes, but in a manner in which we understand why are we reading this, right? First topic that we are going to pick today is classification of companies, or you can say types of companies. Now, what are the different types of companies? You must have read about, you must have heard about listed company, unlisted company, small company, big company. Oh, there's nothing like big company. Private company, public company, one-person company, OPC, that is Section 8 company. So you have heard about a lot of types of companies. Why are we classifying them? And if we are classifying them, what do they exactly mean? Because if we go ahead to read that small company is such limit does not apply to small company, we must know what is small company to understand that text, that section, right? So before we go on to that advanced portion of sections which you actually have to read, we also have to recall certain basics which are undoubtedly the part of your curriculum. So don't think that I'm just trying to recall and you can skip this part. No, you cannot skip this part. You may speed it up a little if you are very sure of all the provisions, all the basic provisions you know. And for the students who for some reason could not work on their basics at this preceding stages, please stay with the same pace. Stay at the same pace with me. Okay, so we are now going to start our class. Okay, one very important thing. believe it or not, this is a theory class. It's full of practical things. It's full of every step you will find a lot of practical aspects, but still you cannot say 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. You don't have to solve any numericals in this class. You have to read bare text, right? So you have to read this, you have to understand this. So undoubtedly it's a theory class, and for theory classes there is a theory. The theory is that in theory classes, or whenever you are learning theory, one uninvited guest in theory classes, one uninvited guest is, my dear, sleep. The sleep disorder, I don't know where it comes from in the theory class, but it will come in such a way that it cannot even match the sleeping pills. You take 10 sleeping pills, still you will not feel that sleepy as sleepy you feel in the theory class. So you have to maintain that control over your own self, and I believe that since you are finalist now, you must have attained, you must have excelled that skill of self-discipline and control by now. Because when you enter into such professional courses where all you have to do is see a screen and read, see a screen, a mobile screen or a laptop screen, and actually try to grasp those concepts, read, understand, appear for exams without any college. So I understand it is difficult, but that is difficult at the foundation level and not at your level, because by now you are very well versed with how it works, very well versed with the whole system. And now you have your goal, you have your vision, which is absolutely clear to you. And no such small things or petty things can actually disrupt that, right? So maintain that focus. In case you feel sleepy, get up, wash your face, and my assurance is that 90% of the time you won't feel sleepy, because I'll try to keep the class as lively as possible with adding humor to it. But of course, this is a professional class and I cannot waste so much of your precious time into those humors and cracking jokes. So they will be within limit. So I'll try to maintain that comfort, that connect with you, so that you don't ever feel that the class is boring. But still, there might be instances where the topic is too crucial that I have to stick to the topic. At that particular point of time, my dear, you have to help me. How are you going to help me? You can pause the video, you can munch something if you feel sleepy. You can wash your face, whatever makes you lively again, whatever makes you energetic, whatever brings you back into focus, you have to do that, right? Okay, now without wasting any more time, let's get going. First of all, the first classification of companies that we are going to discuss is on the basis of incorporation. What is incorporation? Well, we are incorporating a company. See, we have an artificial person and we have a natural person. Natural person comes into picture by natural birth, and artificial person comes into picture by some artificial process, or you can say by some legal process, right? That legal process is known as creating a company or incorporating a company, right? So, on the basis of creation, on the basis of incorporation, a company is created under this act or previous company law. That means some people have united and they call their team a company. If you call your team a company, that will not be a company under Companies Act 2013, unless by following the procedures given under the act, you actually go out to register your association as a company under this act, right? So everyone can do business. These 4 people are doing some business, this person is doing some business, I am doing some business, but we all have the freedom to choose our form of business organization, right? Supposedly, I choose this particular form of business organization, which is company. I have to register it under Companies Act, and only then I will be called as a company under this act, right? So if I am registered under Companies Act 2013, I am called as a registered. However, if I'm not registered, I'm a statutory. There is another word associated with it, which is body corporate. Most of the students, even at this stage, do not understand the difference between body corporate and company. Today, I'll explain you that. Body corporate is something which has certain features. Ma'am, what features? Artificial person, perpetual succession, capacity to sue and be sued in its own name, right? Etc. etc. These features are with the company also. That means company is a body corporate. Yes, of course, why not? Anything, any entity which has these features is a body corporate. Okay, fine, ma'am, we get it. There is another entity known as LIC. What is the tagline of LIC in Hindi? Zindagi ke saath bhi, zindagi ke baad bhi, which means with life and even after life. Right? That is what LIC is. LIC is an entity. LIC is an artificial person. It has perpetual succession. No matter who was the owner of LIC or who was the founder of LIC, LIC is still in existence. Whoever may come, whoever may join, whoever may resign, whoever may die, doesn't matter. LIC is going to continue. So perpetual succession. LIC, you can sue LIC, LIC can sue you, right? So all these features are with LIC also. All these features are with LIC also. That means LIC is also a body corporate. Yes, of course, why not? Company is also a body corporate. LIC is also a body corporate. Some other entity called as say LLP, LLP is also a body corporate. But is LIC a company? LIC cannot be called as a registered company or a company. This registered company is only a company under Companies Act. If you know this definition, you will understand that, right? Is LIC a company? No. Why? Because LIC is not registered under Companies Act 2013. So LIC is a body corporate, yet it is not a company, but a company is a body corporate. So all the companies are body corporates because they will have the features of body corporate, but all body corporates are not necessarily companies. Only those body corporates which are registered under Companies Act 2013 will be called as companies. I hope I'm clear. So, what is LIC? LIC is not incorporated under Companies Act 2013. Rather, it is incorporated or constituted by Special Act of Parliament. What is Special Act of Parliament? Just like we have Companies Act 2013, we also have LIC Act. So, under LIC Act, LIC is constituted. Okay? Under Companies Act, company is constituted. I hope I'm clear. Now, we move on to the second part. On the basis of liability. On the basis of liability. Now, this is something that you have studied before. When I explained you the characteristics of company, in that we discussed about limited liability, right? So there we have discussed it, but still one question, listen to me very carefully, one question to all of you. What is the question, my dear? I am a company. I took loan from a bank amounting to say 20 lakh rupees. I am a company, I took loan from bank amounting to 20 lakh rupees. Now, I have share capital of only 5 lakhs. So, what is my perception is that I have to pay only 5 lakh to the bank. What do you think? How much amount I have to return to bank? How much amount I have to repay? Is it 20 lakhs or is it only 5 lakhs? Now, are you kidding? You've taken a loan of 20 lakhs, so undoubtedly you have to repay 20 lakhs only now. Okay, I get it. Now, supposedly I have bank balance of only 10 lakhs. So, I feel that my assets are only 10 lakhs. How can I repay liability of 20 lakhs? So, my liability is restricted only to 10 lakhs and I will pay only 10 lakhs. Now again, what is this nonsense? You have taken loan of 20 lakhs, so you have to pay 20 lakhs. That means the liability of the company is always unlimited. We cannot put a limit on the liability. Whatever is the liability is the liability. If it's 20 lakh, I have to pay 20 lakh. If it is 50 lakh, I have to pay 50 lakhs. I have created that liability over a period of time and I have to repay it. The company has to repay it. Maybe the company will sell everything and then repay, but the company has to repay. The company cannot do away with its liability, setting a limit on it in any manner whatsoever. So, but what do we mean by this particular point? Limited liability, limited by shares, limited by guarantee. Then what is it? The liability of the company is unlimited. The liability of the members of the company is limited. This particular company, supposedly I am a company and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, say 4 members. This company has 4 members. Now, from every member, I have taken certain amount and issued shares to them. All these 4 members have taken 10 shares each. A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D, 4 members. These 4 members have taken 10 shares each. Mr. A has paid full amount. Okay, Mr. A has paid full amount and has taken 10 shares. Mr. B also has paid full amount and has taken 10 shares. Mr. C has not paid the full amount. He has paid half amount and has taken 10 shares. Mr. D has again paid full amount. Now, can I take anything from Mr. A? From B? From D? I can only take from C. Why? Because the liability of these 4 members towards the company is limited to the amount unpaid on shares held by them. Mr. A has 10 shares and he does not have any unpaid amount on those shares. He has paid full amount. His liability is only restricted to unpaid amount. He doesn't have unpaid amount is 0. So his liability is also 0. Right? Mr. C, unpaid amount is supposedly 5,000. His liability is only restricted and limited to 5,000. I cannot take more than 5,000 from Mr. C. I cannot take more than 0 from Mr. A, B and D. This is what do we mean by company limited by. So, a company limited by shares is a registered company having the liability of its members limited to the amount, if any, unpaid on the shares respectively held by them. Moving on to our next point. See, one thing let me make more clear. Since you have read all of this previously also at your previous levels, but still we are repeating the same. It is there in your syllabus also and we are repeating the same, but I am not going to repeat it in a manner, okay, we are going to take one example, here is Mr. A, here is Mr. C, here from here to here, here to there. and like half an hour should go on this particular topic only. So I'm not going to explain in that particular manner, and you will not even like it, right? Because you will say that, ma'am, okay, fine, we know this, let's move forward, right? But I cannot be too fast also, because I have to understand every kind of students. So if your pace is a little faster than me, bear with me. If it is slower than me, buck up. Okay. Now, companies limited by guarantee. Under guarantee companies also we have two types of companies. One is with share capital and one is without share. That means there can be some only guarantee companies wherein there are 4 members, company has not issued any shares to them, they have not taken any shares, they have just given me an amount of guarantee, 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh each. So now when the company turns into financial difficulties and the company is now selling off assets, paying off liabilities, I can ask these members 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh, 1 lakh. Can I ask these members 90,000? Can I ask these members 1 lakh 10,000? No, 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 no. Why? Because their liability is limited to the amount of guarantee. Now, supposedly, this is a guarantee company with share capital. So, it is a guarantee company also and it has share capital also. So, Mr. A has taken a guarantee of 1 lakh plus Mr. A has 10 shares. On these 10 shares, he has 0 unpaid amount. So, 0 plus 1 lakh. Mr. C has 5,000 unpaid amount on shares and 1 lakh is the guarantee amount. 1 lakh plus 5,000. Do you get my point? Okay. So the liability of the members in case of guarantee company will be limited to such an amount as the members may have respectively decided to contribute. Okay, decided to undertake. Okay. And then we have unlimited companies wherein there is absolutely no limit. You can ask the members to contribute 10 lakhs and they have to. If they don't have 10 lakh rupees, they have to sell their house, they have to sell their car, whatever property, whatever personal property is there with the members, that also they have to sell. Okay, so that is unlimited company. That is in the case of unlimited company. Clear? Okay. Now, this was all that easy part. Now we're going to start with the difficult part. What is the difficult part? Not exactly difficult part, but more serious part and more part which is relevant for us, which will be needed for us. That is on the basis of members. On the basis of members. So we have 3 companies on the basis of members. We have private company, we have public company, and we have one-person company. Private company which has minimum 2 members, public company which has minimum 7 members, and one-person company which has just 1 member. Minimum, maximum, 1 member. Okay, so we will start with private company. If I ask you, what is the section of private company without looking at the screen, of course, can you all tell me how, in which section private company is defined, ma'am? Section number 2. I'm so proud of you all. Which clause? I'm 68. Frankly, we don't remember, but we can see it over here. So we are prompting it just section 2, clause 68. Private, 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 68, private, 68. I hope you are able to now connect and the next time you won't forget it, right? See, Of course, 68, 69, 70, you have private company, you have public company, you have a promoter, you have prospectors, a lot of definitions which start with letter P. They are around here and you have a lot of confusion in them, right? So just to clear that here, I have told you about this connect. It might help you for retaining the definition clause. What is private company? As the word suggests, it is private. That means no outsider should intrude, no outsider can enter. Supposedly you have thrown a private party. Will you allow someone else, any random outsider to come in and join? And we don't even allow our parents to enter into a private party. You're talking about outsiders. Well, I think the scenario is slightly different for this particular generation. They would not allow their parents, maybe, but they would allow the outsiders to join in. So whatever, if it's not the case with you, great. But if it's the case with you, then that particular example doesn't fit in over here. Private means something which is within the people who are involved, right? So supposedly I have formed a company. Along with certain people, as I told you, minimum 2 members have to be there to form a private company. So I have my 4 favorite students sitting over here. Let's say, for example, they have become my favorites by obediently following my instructions and studying very properly. So they have become my favorites. Okay, so I thought to give them a break. I thought to give them a chance, and I incorporated the company. And just looking at their talent, I wanted to give them an opportunity that, okay, come and run this particular company. So V5 came together and formed a company, a private company, because we cannot form a public company. For public company, you need 7 members at least. So V5 formed a private company. Now, we formed a private company. Initially, one share price was rupees. Okay. So I gave one share to all the 4 students, and all other shares I subscribed for them, because I have to contribute money also. Now, I did not want them to contribute money. So they all contributed rupees 10 and they acquired 1 share each, and all the other shares were held by me. Fine. After years of hard work, one fine day, we got the valuation done of our company and our shares. And we discovered that the share price of our company has gone up to 20,000 per share. Now there was one student, very clever student, very cunning student actually, I would say. So he decided that, what am I doing in this particular company? I have better opportunities out there. I will sell my share for 20,000. I'll make so much of profit and I'll just go away. So he decided that, let me auction this particular share. So many people came and they wanted to buy the share. Any random person, someone from public, they all came and they started to bargain. And finally, the students sold the share of the company for 18,000. Okay, no problem. The next day, the company had the meeting of all its members. That means V5, right? So when the meeting started, the person who had, the random guy, some stranger who had bought the shares of the company from that student, walked into the room, and we all asked, who are you? From where have you come? This is a private meeting. This is a private company. This is a private space. He said, nothing is private anymore, okay? I am the new shareholder of the company. I said, how come? How did you become the shareholder of the company? That student sold his share to me. He said, no, this is not possible. Why is it not possible? Because a private company restricts the transferability of. If you are a member of a private company, you don't have the right to transfer your shares to anyone. That means we cannot transfer our shares. You can, but it's subject to certain conditions. You could have discussed, you could have asked everyone that I want to transfer my share. Who is the prospective candidate that you want to bring in? Okay, you cannot let just anyone come into our private space. That is the restriction which private company imposes. That the articles of association of a private company imposes. What are articles of association? They are internal rules of the company. So I'll start from the very beginning. Private company. Private company means a company which has 2 members minimum, which has 200 members maximum. See, if I'm taking, let's say, a private class. Okay, let's say I'm taking a private class. Up to 200 students, I will still remember the names. I might still remember the names. I might even know the details. But if it goes to say 2000, do you think it is possible for me to remember all the names? Then it will become a public class. Do you agree? If it is a private thing, it is believed that everyone must be aware of each other and things like that, right? It limits the number of members to 200. Okay. So private company, minimum number of members 2. Maximum number of members 200. Minimum number of directors 2. Maximum number of directors 15. It became 20. 15. Right. Now, how 15? Well, this you will read in the chapter of directors. So we are not discussing that particular part right now. We will read it in the chapter of directors. Fine. But it is 15. It can be increased, of course, by passing a resolution. But as of now, it is 15. Right. Now, minimum number of members 2, maximum number of members 200, minimum number of directors 2 and maximum number of directors 15. This is for a private company. Apart from this, what we discussed is it restricts the transferability of shares. Moreover, it prohibits invitation to public to subscribe to its shares, which the student did. It went to general public and started that auction of shares. It is just not possible. The transfer of shares can happen subject to the conditions or the rules which are made, but you can never go out to public and say that if anyone wants to subscribe the shares, they can. You can never invite general public to do so. So that's a complete prohibition. I hope you understand. Photography prohibited, that means you cannot hide a camera and just click a photo. Prohibited means prohibited. Restricted means the entry is restricted. That means someone can go, maybe they have to seek certain permissions and then you can go. But prohibited means prohibited. So a private company has limitation, has restriction, has prohibition. Limitation, it limits the number of members up to 200. Restriction, it restricts the transferability of its shares, and prohibition, it prohibits the public to subscribe to its security. I hope that's clear. Great. Private company means a company which by its articles, what are articles? Articles are the internal rules. Articles are the internal rules by which a company governs. Restricts the right to transfer its shares, limits the number to 200, prohibit invitation to public to subscribe for its securities of the company. Clear? So I think these 3 points are clear. Right. Now, next point which I have to discuss. Earlier, there was a requirement of share capital. Minimum 1 lakh share capital to run a private company. Half of the students are not listening to me, will just listen minimum 1 lakh to run a private company, okay. And then in exam they will write the same and then say, ma'am, you told this only. I told something else also. Earlier this was the requirement, now this is not the requirement. So, earlier it was like every private company must have at least 1 lakh capital in hand and then only it can run as a company. But now such requirement has been removed. The section has been amended and the section tells us that a company which has at least this much capital. What capital? At least the capital which has been prescribed. What has been prescribed? Nothing has been prescribed. So why the section was amended, ma'am? See, to amend a section is difficult. To amend rules, it is easy. So whenever the ruling government or anyone, the government wants to alter this, wants to change this, they can. Right? So if they want to, let's say, bring in a rule that every private company must have a share capital of 2 lakh, they just have to amend the rules, because in section what is written? In section it is written having minimum paid up capital as prescribed. So they just have to change that rules, what has been prescribed. If you ask me currently, nothing has been prescribed. That means a company which has just 10,000 capital, that can also run as a private company, because there is no requirement of minimum capital as of now. Private company, minimum 2 members, maximum 2 members, no minimum capital required, restriction on transferability of shares, prohibition on public to subscribe to security. Prohibition on inviting public to subscribe to securities. Clear so far? Okay. Now, let's say for example, Vicky and Kat, they got married, and when anyone gets married, they have some couple goals. What are the couple goals? Oh, I want to have a joint account. Oh, I want to have my Facebook name updated to, I want to change my surname or whatever. Right? So likewise, this say newlywed couple also decided, and they also wanted that we want some investment to be made in a joint name. So they bought the shares of a company. Now when they bought the shares of the company, it was written Vicky and Kat. Kat and Vicky, whatever you consider. Now the shares were of a private company. The private company's directors started to count their members. Vicky plus. So they started to count their members, and since they were 2 members, they counted both the members, and the total of their members came out to be 201. Oh my God. They were highly disappointed looking at the non-compliance they just did. They had to set a limit. They were supposed to limit the number of members to 200 only, and their number of members has crossed 200. It's 201 now. Worried, they came running to us, and we told them to cool down. Cool down. You have not done any non-compliance. They said, how? We said, wait. They are joint owners, and joint owners are counted as 1 member only. Supposedly, you give dividend rupees 10 to every shareholder. Will you give 10 to Vicky and 10 to Kat separately? He said, I don't mind giving it to Kat. They said, keep your affection aside and now tell. No, no, of course I will give 10 and they have to share it 5 each. So we said, my dear, they are going to be counted as one member only. So joint holders are to be counted as one member only. That means your total is only 200 and you have not done any non-compliance. Now he was happy. Fine. After some time, the company decided that I have 50 employees on board and these employees work so hard for us. But I don't have money to give them as a part of their incentive or anything like that. So why not I bring up an employee stock option plan, ESOP, about which you must have read before, and even if you haven't, it doesn't matter. So under employee stock option plan, I can give away the employees certain shares. So the company gave these employees 50 employees. Now just look at the situation. It already had 200 members plus 50. The total went up to 250 again. The BP of the directors of that company shoot up. He said, relax, come back, relax again. So now what happened? We again have done some non-compliance. And no non-compliance you have done even now. Provided that persons who are in the employment of the company shall not be included in the number of members. That means, ma'am, when the company wants to give away dividend, to these members, we have to give dividend to only 200 members and not to these 50 members. We said no. These are your employees. They should also be entitled to the benefits attached with the shares, because you have given them shares, you will also give them dividend. Oh, so we have to give dividend to 250 members. We said yes, but these 50 members will not be included in the number of members when you are calculating this particular limit. Okay, now we get it. Now again problem came up. Which problem came up? Out of these 50 employees, 10 employees left the company. But they still had those shares. So now 200 members already we had plus 50. But you said these 50 will not be included. But these 10 employees have left the company, so they are not our employees anymore. So if we add 10, it will again come out to 210. So again non-compliance. No. The persons who are in the employment of the company and the persons who have been formerly in the employment of the company, that means your present plus past employees, both will not be counted. Okay, provided they have acquired the shares in the capacity as an employee. So the special points, joint holders are going to be counted as one, and the employees, whether past and present, are not going to be counted. But they will still be entitled to all the benefits attached to the shares. So if we sum up, my dear, requirements of a private company, there is no minimum paid up capital requirement. The maximum number of members, the minimum number of members is 2. For one-person company, it is 1. That I have already told you, and one-person company is also a type of private company. Maximum number of members 200. Right to shares, right to transfer shares restricted. Prohibition on invitation to public to subscribe to securities. OPC can be formed as a private company. Private company needs to have minimum 2 directors. Small company wala point, this point we will study later. Okay, this point we will study later when we discuss about small company. Yeah. See, one thing I can assure you that towards the end of every class, you will be able to recall and you will be able to answer every question that I may put in front of you. When we are talking about this particular law subject, it is a 4-stage learning, my dear. First stage is concept building, which we are doing right now. The second stage will be learning. The third stage will be, you can say, or let me make it more refined. Not exactly learning the concepts. First of all, you grasp the concepts. That is, you have built up the concepts. The second stage is you learn these concepts. That means you have to keep it in your memory fresh. You have to keep it retained. Okay, so that is the retention part. You have to focus, you have to work on retention, you have to develop ways how you are going to learn this. Okay, the third stage is understanding the requirements or discussing the questions part. That is how questions can be framed, what can be asked. So understanding all that requirement and learning how the questions can be put up. And the last part is the presentation. Okay, so we are going to do it step by step. How are we going to do it step by step? First of all, in such a class, you are concept building. How you are going to learn? If you continuously revise with me, you will not have any trouble in learning. I'm going to give you memory techniques also as and when required, and you are doing the concept building part with me. The next step is learning. After every chapter, as and when I revise, you have to also revise with me. Okay, and as many times as I tell you, you have to just continuously revise, so that learning part will also be done. Of course, at the end of every chapter, we are going to do a lot of questions, so that question part will also be done. And then lastly, we will work on our presentation skills. With questions, that will also be done, but this presenting is what you actually do in that 3 hours of examination. Right, so the first step is very important, which is concept building, and you must work on the same. So I think your concept for private company is all built up. Agree? What is the definition of private company? Or let's see whether this actually works or not. Can anyone tell me section 2 clause for private company? What is it? What is it? I think 100% of the students have given me the correct answer. That is heart-to-heart connection to you, and I can actually feel it that you all are prompting from 68, and so I've written it 68. Okay. Now, public company is section 2 clause 71. Public company is section 2 clause 71, and it is the easiest definition you will ever see. A public company is a company which is not a private company. Which is not a private company. See, why this classification? First of all, any voluntary association of people which is registered under Companies Act becomes a company, right? Why are we classifying this company that are you a private company or are you a public company? See, if we are a family, and in my family there are 10 siblings, 10 brothers and sisters. Now what happens when there are 10 brothers and sisters? There are a lot of fights between them also. You have to switch off the light, it is your duty to shut the door, you have to turn on good night, all these petty issues. Now let's say, for example, to decide all that, an election is being conducted in that family for electing one representative of those 10 brothers and sisters, who is going to instruct, okay, this has to be done, or who is going to divide the work and do that thing. Now, this private election in a private family can be done in whatsoever manner they want to. No one is going to come and control that you have to do it like this. Why? Because that's their private affair. Agree? But if you are talking about country's election, it's not a private affair, and it cannot be conducted in any manner as they please. Right? It has to be done according to the rules which are being laid down for general public, for everyone. Why? Because your public is involved. We are involved, you are involved, everyone is involved. But in that, only those 10 people were involved. It was their private affair, their private family. Right? But of course, they are also subjected to certain rules as a citizen of the country. Right? So, in the same manner, when I'm talking about private companies, since it is controlled, since it is run, since it is for the benefit of certain private people, it is not subjected to a lot of restrictions and regulations. Certain regulations are still there, but not very strict ones. But when I'm talking about a public company wherein public is involved, the rules are more strict for them. The rules are more strict for them. The laws are more strict for them. So we need to categorize. That's why this classification is being done. Now, in public company, there are at least minimum 7 members. Maximum, there is no limit. That means there can be 7 members also. There can be 100, there can be 200. Sorry, there can be 10,000, there can be 50,000, there can be 50 lakh. Whatsoever number of members can be there in a public company, no limit. Minimum number of directors 3, maximum number of directors again 15. Okay. Now, minimum paid up capital requirement, the same as in private company. Minimum paid up capital as prescribed, and nothing has been prescribed. Okay, so no requirement of minimum capital in a public company also. Is there any restriction on transferability of shares? No. Their shares can be transferred to anyone. Fine. Is there any prohibition on inviting public to subscribe for securities? No. You can go out to general public. You can go out to general public if you want to raise funds from public. You can go ahead. You can give your shares to public and you can raise money. Not a problem. Okay, so I think so far things are clear. Now, problem number 1. Problem number 1. There is a company, A Limited, which is a public company. I hope you know that. A Limited has 70% shares of P Private Limited. Okay, let's say this amount comes out to be 70 crores. So there is a company, a public company, which has invested. From where will this company invest amount? I'm a public company. So I have sold the shares to general public, and from general public I have collected 100 crores. Out of this 100 crores, 70 crore I very conveniently invested into a private company. Private company could not raise money from public because there is a prohibition. So I have raised money from public and I have given it to private company. Wow. I have very strict laws because government thinks I'm a public company. So I should have this also, rotation of auditors, then etc. etc. A lot of checks and regulations. Fine. But the private company can do whatever they want to, as and when they want to, in a manner they please. Do you think It's misusing law. This private company has all the money of public, yet it is not in control of government. It's not regulate. It does not have to comply with the strict laws. Do you think it is fair enough? To come out of this loophole, the government conveniently made a provision and said that a company which is a subsidiary of a public company shall be deemed to be a public company. Now, this company, despite being a private company, will be considered as a public company. Great. That means, ma'am, now this P Private Limited has to write P Limited? No. That means, ma'am, now this P Private Limited, which earlier had just 2 members, has to now change its number of members to 7. No. It can stay as a private company, but it has to comply with all the laws of public. It will not be given some benefits and exemptions and privileges that you are a private company, you can have your own rules. No, you have to follow the rules as are made for public company. As a made for public company, you must have read about rotation of auditors. It has to comply. Rotation of auditors is not mandatory. It is not mandatory for private company. So it was not mandatory for P Private Limited. But now, since it is a deemed public company, it also has to comply with the provisions of rotation of auditors. Okay. So I hope you get that now. So, public company means a company which is not a private company, which has a minimum paid up share capital as may be prescribed, provided that a company which is a subsidiary of a company not being a private company shall be deemed to be a public company. Clear. Fine. It is not a private company, shares are freely transferable, no minimum paid up capital requirement, minimum number of members 7, maximum no limit, subsidiary is deemed to be a public company, it can stay as a private company in its articles, minimum number of directors 3. Clear? Okay. Moving further. The next type of company. The next type of company. One person company. OPC. One person company. OPC. What is OPC? As the name suggests, it just has one person. Minimum 1, maximum 1. Minimum number of director 1, maximum number of director again 15. Since it is just with one member, I hope you understand that it is for encouraging the small and budding entrepreneurs to get that corporate status. Despite the fact that they cannot work as a private company, they don't have anyone to join hands with, they do not want to go to public, yet they want to work in that corporate environment, attain that corporate status. So they have been given an opportunity in the form of a one-person company. Okay. So one-person company will have just one member, minimum 1, maximum. And what happens? Listen to me very carefully. What happens? I have discussed with you the case of money also in perpetual succession. Anyways, what happens? I started a one-person company. After some time, I met with an accident and unfortunately, I died. Now, who is going to run my company? And if no one is going to run my company, because I was the only director, I was the only member, who is going to take over the charge of the company? No one knows anything. I was the only person. If I was the only person and I was running the company, with my death, the company also comes to an end, right? And when the company comes to an end, the whole essence of perpetual succession also comes to an end, which is one of the main features of a company. To avoid this, the government came up with one rule. The government said, as an individual, what do? You have your FD, you add a nominee. You have your policies, you add a nominee. That if anything happens to me, this should pass on to my nominee. In the same manner, you add a nominee in one-person company also. If anything happens to me, the company will pass on to this person, and that person will become the sole member of the company. This is the main essence of one-person company. I often equate forming an OPC with the getting married. Let's say this is marriage and this is forming an OPC. For forming an OPC, you have to find out who can become your nominee. For getting married, you have to find out who will you get married to. So you have to find a girl over here, you have to find a nominee over here. You have to take the permission from the nominee that are you ready to become my nominee? Right? You have to ask your girl, are you ready to become my wife? You have to obtain consent, Now, maybe the person gave you the consent, but after some point of time, they want to take away the consent. So they can. The girl said yes to you. After some time, the girl liked someone else. She said yes to someone else. So they can withdraw their consent also, both of them. And it might so happen with you that after some time, you might start to like someone else, right? So you might want to let that person go, right? So you can also change the name of the girl before marriage, of course. You can change the name of the nominee, right? But till when? Till something happens to me and that nominee takes over. Till the marriage, of course, right? So there are a lot of similarities between these two situations. The whole crux of one-person company comes out to be only one person as a member, minimum paid up capital, there is absolutely no limit. The memorandum of one-person company, that is the fundamental charter of any company, is going to indicate. Memorandum of association has different clauses. Name, capital, liability, I hope you remember. In one-person company, you add a clause as succession clause. In that, you are going to write the name. You're going to write the name of who is going to take the place in case of death or incapacity of the sole member or the sole subscriber. Clear? The person whose name is given has to submit his consent prior to the name is being filed. The person has the right to withdraw consent also, and the member can also change the name by giving notice. Okay, we are going to read all this a little later when we discuss about the incorporation of company. Then again, I'm going to take up these issues, and then I will give you more clarity in case you don't have it right now. Fine. Now, who can become the member? Who is eligible to incorporate one-person company? Supposedly Reliance Industries Limited wants to form an OPC, and they want that is Reliance Industries Limited should be the sole person. Government doesn't permit that. Why? Because government thinks that there's going to be only one member, right? Company is an artificial person. We need a natural person to form one-person company so that he should have his ability to think, read, write, everything, right? So should be a natural person. So only a natural plus someone who is an Indian citizen can be the sole member, can be the nominee. You might be reading natural person plus Indian citizen, listen to me very carefully, plus resident is required to form a one-person company. You might have read it at your preceding stage also. This requirement has been waived away. So even if in any book you read this, trust me, this is an old provision, right? So the amended one comes out to be that there are now only these two requirements. It doesn't matter whether you are a resident or not. So government also understands that now half of the people stay abroad for work or pleasure. So that requirement has been done away with. You don't need to be a resident anymore to be eligible to become the sole member of one-person company or to become the nominee of one-person company. Okay. Although, who is the resident? Someone who has stayed in India for at least 120 days during proceeding is resident. Ma'am, if the requirement of resident is no more required, why are you teaching us this particular limit? Because an objective type of question you may be asked. You may be asked a question that how do you determine the residential status in case of sole member of one-person company? So what will you write? You have to write the residential, or a person will be treated as a resident if he stays in India for at least 120 days in the immediately preceding financial year. Here. So you have to remember that it's 120 days, although it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether resident in India or not. The only two requirements are that the person should be a natural person and he should be an Indian citizen. So these are the two requirements, my dear. Now, Mr. Pappu. Mr. Pappu is a member of one OPC. He is a nominee of another OPC. Allowed. Mr. Pappu is a member of one OPC and he is a member of another OPC. Not allowed. Not allowed. No person can incorporate more than one OPC or become nominee in more than one OPC. That means Mr. Pappu is a nominee in one OPC and he is also a nominee in another OPC. Not allowed. Only this is allowed. And that too, you might have a question in mind, ma'am, what happens if he is a member of one OPC and he is a nominee of another OPC? Supposedly in this OPC, the sole member dies and now Mr. Pappu becomes the member of this OPC also. He was already a member of this OPC and he became the member of this OPC also. Because the sole member died, so nominee had to take the place of the member. Now what will happen? So he is given 180 days time period to decide which OPC he wants to continue and he has to leave one OPC. Okay, he has to leave one OPC. Apart from this, no minor can become the member or nominee of OPC because it is considered that the person should be of sound mind and should be major to take decisions. These are the points that you must learn. The company cannot ever be incorporated or converted into Section 8 company. Section 8 company is a company which is not for the profit motive. Okay. So the company cannot be converted into Section 8 company, and one-person company cannot carry out NBFC activity. What is NBFC? It is like banking. It also gives loan, takes deposits and like things, but it cannot... It has some features of the bank, not all features of the bank that you can say. If you want to learn more about NBFC, you can check out my video on YouTube. You will find the same. Okay. So these are the 3 points to learn. Okay, you must remember these 3 points. This is something which you must learn. Apart from this, if OPC contravenes the provisions, it is going to be punishable. The person is going to be punishable with a fine 10,000 and with a further fine which may extend to 1,000 for every day after the first contravention. Okay, as far as penalties are concerned, let me make it clear right away that I am taking efforts to give you a summarized penalty for every chapter. In case you don't find it in any chapter, do it the same on your own, because earlier penalties were not asked in examination, but now the institute is giving due importance to penalties and you cannot ignore them, right? So that's it with this particular class. In the next class, we are going to start with other types of companies. I have explained you these companies in quite a detailed manner, though quickly, because I believe this is the basis for the whole Companies Act. So you must understand, you must know why this classification, what is this classification, and what happens, right? So that's it. Thank you, children. See you in the next class.